Good evening. I'm calling to order the meeting of the City of Salem Budget Committee for April 22nd, 2026. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Member Belicheks?
Here.
Member Nishioka?
Present.
Member Brown?
Present.
Member Manville?
Here.
Member Cohen?
Present.
Member Allen?
Here.
Member Matthews?
Here.
Member Gwen?
Here.
Member Julie Hoy?
Here.
Member Fuller?
Present.
Member Vang?
Here.
Member Nordike?
Here.
Member Varney?
Here.
Member Dixon?
Here.
Member Murray?
Here.
Member Geyer?
Here.
Vice Chair Vera Brandel is absent, and Chair Tigan.
Present. Well, before we proceed, I graciously accept your patience as I'm away from Salem this week again. I'm virtual this week, and as we heard in the roll, Vice Chair Vera Brandel is absent. Before we move any further, how about let's stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Apologize for skipping ahead. I'm virtual this week, and as Vice Chair Vera Brandel is absent, I'd like to ask our experienced Chair Russ Allen to step in as the chair for tonight's evening. If there are, for tonight's meeting, if there are no objections, I would hand it to Russ to take the chair, and I will be back in Salem next week.
They all had an opportunity.
Thank you, Member Allen.
All right. Thank you, Chair Tigan, for one night only. All right. So I will go ahead and run the meeting this evening to the best of my ability. We have some additions to the agenda, which includes written testimony, multiple errata sheets, and a staff report. Could I have a motion to approve the additions to the agenda?
I so move. I second.
Okay. So I have a motion from Member Nishioka and a second from Member Varney. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying no. The motion passes unanimously. Public testimony, you do have public testimony, written public testimony in your packets. So I would certainly ask members to review the public comments from Linda Beerley, Larry Sipe, and Elise Strauss, as well as additional comments by Linda Beerley. So at this point in the meeting, it would be public comment on everything other than the CIP, everything on the agenda other than what's in the CIP. I have no one signed up to speak at this time. Is that correct? Okay. The next order of business on the agenda is the approval of the April 15th, 2026 Budget Committee meeting minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the April 15, 2026 meeting?
I move to approve the minutes from the April 26th meeting.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion from Member Gwen and a second from Member Nishioka. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please. Sorry, I got to wait for that delay. My bad. All those opposed, please signify by saying no. All right, the motion passes unanimously. All right, there are 2 action items this evening, Mr. Eggleston. Would you please walk us through errata 1, 2, and 3?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 3 erratas for your consideration this evening. The first is addition to the Capital Improvements Fund for a Fisher Road Park grant, both the revenue and expense. We did not know about the grant during development of the budget, so we'd like to add it to the budget to make sure we're ready for when we receive that grant. Errata sheet 2 is an omission of the traffic signals operations and maintenance program, a very important program. In the program pages, we just want to make sure it's reflected there. And then errata sheet 3 is removal of a State Street project, just due to some mechanisms with some conflicts of interest. So we're pulling it out so we can address it separately from the budget process to make sure all members are able to participate.
Member Nordyke.
Sure. I'd like to declare a conflict of interest with regard to errata 3 regarding the State Street project. My family owns property there, so I am declaring actual conflict, which means I'll take no participation in the deliberations or the vote on this matter. And I can step away. I don't know if the city attorney needs me to step away from the meeting. All right, off I go. Thank you. I'll have my city cell phone. Just let me know.
Member Nishioka.
Nishioka, thank you. Actual conflict, I need to step away as well? Thank you.
So the errata number 3, I believe the committee received information from the city attorney on this matter earlier today.
That is correct, yes.
Their conflict of interest is voting on errata sheet. It says, due to the conflict of interest with some members regarding errata 3, we were going to adopt each of the errata separately. Should we start with 3 so that we might invite them back for 1 and 2?
Yeah, that would work well.
Okay. So, may I have a motion to approve staff recommend, we will have conversation after the motion. May I have a motion to approve staff recommendation for errata sheet number 3? Remember, we're talking about number 3. Member Manville?
So moved.
Second.
All right. I have a motion from Member Manville and a second from Member Gwynn. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. 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 All those opposed, please signify by saying no. The motion passes unanimously. We can invite the conflicted members back in. One is racing back in. Continue? Okay. So, Member Nishioka, we only made a motion and voted on errata sheet number 3. So we're going to go back and do 1 and 2 now. Okay? So, may I have a motion to approve staff recommendation?
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is Member Nordyke.
I was given a motion to continue, but now I see that she is back.
Okay.
I was following orders. Member Nordyke, we have taken action on errata sheet number 3. We did not on 1 and 2, so that's what we're going back to do. So you can participate in errata sheets 1 and 2. Okay. 3, we have completed action on number 3. Okay, thank you. So may I have a motion to approve staff recommendation for errata sheet number 1?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Member Gwynn and a second from Member Manville. Is there any discussion on errata sheet number 1? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying no. Motion passes unanimously. May I have a motion to approve staff recommendation for errata sheet number 2?
So moved.
We have a motion from Member Gwynn and a second from Member Matthews. Is there any discussion on errata number 2? Yes, Mr. Belichick.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. This is a errata because it was forgotten in the original? Sorry.
Not forgotten. There was a formula error where it was omitted, so we're adding it back to the program pages.
Follow up?
Sure,
I just used the wrong word for the same thing.
Yes, but it's a very important program, so I don't want to discount it.
We would never
Yes.
forget traffic signals. Sorry.
Did you get your answer, Mr. Belichick? Okay. All right. Is there any other discussion on errata sheet number 2? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying no. The motion passes unanimously. All right, thank you for that administrative detail. Next, we will move on to information items. These items include 3 staff reports and 4 quarterly reports. And I believe that is you, Mr. Eggleston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first item, 5A, is a summary budget committee actions through our last meeting. 5B is answers to budget committee questions. Items 5C through F are quarterly financial reports. The quarter 4 are the final reports for the city and URA. So we finished the annual audit process for fiscal year 2025. So there were some small adjustments between the preliminary financial reports and the final ones. So these are the final ones, and they include a little bit more detail. And then the quarter 2 financial reports for fiscal year 2026 through March. And then 5G is additional responses to budget committee questions. I'm happy to address any questions on those.
Thank you, Mr. Eggleston. Are there any questions for staff regarding these information items? Mr. Manville.
Thank you. There were a few questions that I submitted in writing. Should I ask those orally? Should I just wait until next meeting? How should I handle this?
So if there's a few questions we didn't have time to complete, that'll be on the next meeting. If they're related to an agenda item tonight, like if they're a CIP question, I'd recommend asking those during the question and answer portion of the CIP public hearing. If not, let me know if we missed something. We'll make sure we get it addressed.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda will be to conduct a public hearing on the proposed capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2027 through 2031. We will first hear a presentation on the proposed CIP. After the presentation, there will be time for public testimony regarding the CIP. At the conclusion of public testimony, the Budget Committee will then have the opportunity to ask questions of staff. The public hearing is now open. James Wharton Hess will provide the staff presentation on the CIP.
Hello, Budget Committee. My name is James Wharton Hess. I'm an analyst in the Budget Office, and I'm here to present the 2027 through 2031 Capital Improvement Plan. So I usually start these hearings with what is a capital improvement plan. It's a 5-year plan for capital spending. It's primarily a planning tool as opposed to an appropriation document like a budget. And it's governed by Council Policy C9, which last year this committee recommended change to City Council, which they passed. And we'll get into a little bit of that later. And in addition, state law requires that projects financed by system development charges, or SDCs, be part of an adopted financial plan, and the CIP is used to fulfill that requirement. So how are CIP projects, how do they get into the CIP? They're identified in multiple ways, including via infrastructure assessments, planning processes, plan documents, and other updates. For urban renewal, master plan updates, strategic action plans, and advisory committee meetings provide guidance for direction for included projects. The city's various infrastructure plans, such as the transportation system plan and the parks master plan, are also important to the CIP development process. In terms of public outreach, my apologies. In terms of public outreach, the CIP is noticed to the public in several ways, and often the projects that are included in the CIP are part of a master plan or other process that includes outreach to neighborhood associations or advisory boards. The CIP website includes information about CIP development process as well as prior CIP documents. And the website also includes a project request form that allows residents to submit projects to the city, and that's available year-round and can be accessed at any time. Also on the website is a CIP map that's interactive that the GIS team has updated. You can click on individual projects and it'll pop up with a brief description of the project in the CIP. And finally, each year a public hearing is held. That's why I'm here. And this public hearing was noticed through the weekly emailed Salem Community Connection, the city's website, and the Salem Reporter. I also like to go through the distinction between a CIP and a budget. So the CIP itself is primarily a planning document. It contains projects where likely funding sources have been identified, have a cost of over $100,000, or include new projects and new funding sources. Projects that have been identified but don't have an identified funding sources are not included in the CIP until that funding source can be identified. So as the process moves forward, the year one CIP projects move into the budget. Previously funded and carryover projects contained in the current 2026 budget will then roll over into the 2027 budget. And so then the budget will include year one CIP projects as well as carryover projects, mid-year adds, reappropriations, some administrative costs, and some smaller capital projects that don't quite hit that $100,000 threshold to be in the CIP. So the CIP is primarily made up of these pages for each individual project, and I just like to go through what everything is here. So up in the top left corner, there's a project number. That's the unique identifier for each project, followed by the category of infrastructure of that project, the neighborhood association or neighborhood associations that that project is in, and then the title in bold underneath that. Up in the right-hand corner, you will see a score if the project is scored, followed by the ward or wards that the project is in. The middle section is the financial section. It has the funding source and the year at the top. Under that is the funding sources that make up the funding for the project, and then the current CIP total. Under that is any amount funded in prior years, and then those add up to equal the total estimated project cost. Below that is a brief description of the project, and then I sort of prefaced it earlier, but at the direction of this committee, actually, we added an anticipated operating impact statement for all new projects in the CIP. So projects that have been in previous year CIPs aren't included here, so you'll see those in only a few projects. But as we go through the CIP process, we're going to be adding more and more. The lift of that work is just pretty significant, and I think long-term the plan is to be that a little more hefty, but we wanted to make some progress, so that's why that's in there right now. So before moving into specifics of the CIP, I did want to reflect back on some of the city's recent project accomplishments. In fiscal year 2026, 12 construction projects have been or will be completed. That includes the new gear skate park, the boiler replacement project at Willow Lake, and athletic courts at Hoover Park, all pictured here. There's also some projects starting in 2027 that we wanted to highlight, including the McKay Park Improvements Project. Rendering that is on the left, and you can see that on page 229 of your city budget book. And then the Marion Parkade Capital Improvements Project, that's the rendering on the right. You can see some detail on that on page 48 of the URA budget. That's the smaller budget book. And finally, I just wanted to highlight a few of the projects you'll see in the capital in the CIP. So the first one is the 16th Street Culvert Replacement Project. This project provides a critical infrastructure improvement at the culvert crossing of East Fork Pringle Creek at 16th Street Southeast. The existing corrugated steel culvert, which has been in service for approximately 70 years, has deteriorated significantly due to corrosion, leading to roadway settlement and safety concerns. The Public Works Department has implemented temporary repairs to stabilize the curve, the street above, but the replacement project will replace the existing culvert with a larger concrete box culvert designed to enhance roadway safety and facilitate improved fish passage within East Fork Pringle Creek. The second project is the Guerin Island resanding program. So slow sanding filters clean water by letting it flow through sand using gravity. The water passes through a biological layer, forms on the surface, and removes impurities. And over time, that biological layer thickens and slows or stops water flow. To restore the filter, the layer and a small portion of sand beneath it are scraped off, and repeatedly doing that eventually erodes all the sand. So the resanding process involves removing the current sand, adding new sand to the bottom, and replacing the original sand on top. The filters were last resanded about 10 years ago and now need new sand added to maintain proper performance. And details of those projects are on page 69 and 85 of your CIP document. So the details, I just wanted to start by saying this does include the adoption of Errata 3, so that has been stripped out of these numbers. But the 27 through 31 CIP is just under $400 million over the 5 years. It's 165 projects, 26 funding sources, and 11 categories of infrastructure. And then on page 14, you'll see a result area summary, which is sort of how we view the budget. And you can see all of the result areas are represented in the CIP. This is just a pie chart of CIP projects by funding source. The 2022 safety and livability bond, as well as utility rates, make up the vast majority. And that all other category there includes parks, utility and transportation SDCs, donations, lodging tax, streetlight rates, radio rates, among others. And a breakdown of that is on page 13 of the CIP document. Similarly, transportation and utilities make up the vast majority of project categories in the CIP, followed by smaller portions for municipal and community facilities. This is another way to look at it in the smaller categories. So historic structure and parks projects make up the $26.7 million in community facility projects. Airport building, IT, and parking structure projects make up $59.6 million in municipal facility projects. Street and streetlight projects make up $151.4 in transportation projects, and water, stormwater, and wastewater projects make up the $171.6 million in utility projects. So that concludes the staff presentation for the proposed capital improvement plan, and I and other representatives from city departments are available to answer my question after public comment. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. I do know that Linda Beerley from Ward 8 has signed up to testify on the CIP. So if she would come forth, thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I'm Linda Beerley. I live in Ward 8. I am here to ask that you adopt Eco-Earth restoration as a budget priority for fiscal year 2027. Last night, I attended the Can Do Neighborhood Association meeting. Councilors Teagan and Nishioka were there to report on city news and city council activity. It was so heartening to listen to such a positive message from both councilors. They focused on the city manager's message of a welcoming and livable community, and the city priority of clean, safe and healthy city. Both mentioned upcoming events to draw people downtown and coming improvements such as the Pringle Park pathway from the Civic Center to Riverfront Park and the new inclusive playground coming to Riverfront Park, both within close view of the Eco-Earth globe. These major attractions will bring many visitors to the Riverfront Park area. They will be coming to experience the park and the activities. They will not be coming to watch the tiles fall off the Eco-Earth globe. The restoration of Eco-Earth needs to become a priority. It is impossible to overstate the value of urban art. Art reflects the spirit and the ethos of the community. It tells the world who we are. Eco-Earth is a unique artwork and a unique story. It brought the community together to celebrate this, to create this beautiful mosaic structure, to work through the challenges and celebrate the success of the final product. I am advocating for the Budget Committee to allocate additional funding for the renovation of Eco-Earth. According to new estimates, the costs for this project come to $1.5 million. Currently, the Eco-Earth CIP revenue stands at $383,620. $300,000 of that was raised by the Salem Parks Foundation. The Eco-Earth needs an additional $1.2 million for renovation, administrative costs, and contingency funds. The Public Works engineer supporting this project suggested that the funding come from the general fund. Other possibilities include the transit occupancy tax, the Public Art Trust Fund, and working with partners to raise funds. Eco-Earth has been neglected for far too long. Literally thousands of visitors pass by it. It can remain an eyesore and detract from the surrounding new projects, or it can be restored back to its place as the most valuable artwork in the city's collection, another jewel in the Riverfront Park crown. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else present who wishes to testify on the CIP? All right. I do not see anyone else who would like to provide testimony. So now it is time for questions for staff from the Budget Committee. Member Dixon first, and then Fuller. I have a cheat sheet here. Member Fuller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have three questions that they shouldn't require long answers. Given the share of capital improvement plan funding from the general obligation bond, what's the lifespan of that bond? When does it run out?
Thank you, Member Dixon. Currently, we're forecasting those projects through about 2033. But similar to other bonds, they could stretch a couple years depending on the specific projects.
Thank you. And then traditionally, what share of CIP projects are likely to be completed? I realize that these have been recommended, but the funding still needs to be authorized and the work needs to be done. So traditionally, what percentage of those that are in a CIP actually get completed?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So sometimes we see projects move around. Certainly the years or the funding amount shifts. But generally most CIP projects are completed. They might not be in the specific start and end time as depicted in the CIP document. But in general, we do complete all the projects unless circumstances change, priorities change, and things are shifted. And there is a section in the front of the CIP document where it shows you the changes from the last CIP document to this one.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Chairman, just one more quick question. Does the staff, I know the staff is starting to calculate the operational cost implications for new projects. Does staff have a sense over time of what the net impact of CIP projects is on city operational costs? Is it typically net positive or net negative or just net neutral?
Invite the Public Works Director to come up and answer that one.
Good evening, Brian Martin, Public Works Director. I think over the long run, it actually costs more to maintain because we have facilities more to maintain. However, there can be short-term gains. So when we build something that's new, it doesn't typically need to be maintained for, well, significant maintenance, I would say, for a period of time, like 10 or 15 or 20 years. That doesn't mean that streets don't have to be swept and striping doesn't have to be replaced, but that generally would happen for that street anyway. So generally it's kind of a positive in the early stages, but then long-term it can get to be more expensive.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Member Fuller.
Thank you. On slide 9, you directed us to the top right corner where there was a score for the project. I'm just curious, how is that scoring system? Can you describe to us a little bit how that's used and what it means? how would one project get scored differently than another?
Sure, yeah, let me just find that page. There's a page that explains the scoring process a little bit in the book. Yes, page 7 of the CIP describes this process, and each category is scored a little bit different, but they're all scored, I believe, on a 100-point scale. So, yeah, you can see the breakdown of that score. Okay, thank you.
Member Manville.
Yeah, just a little bit of a follow-up on that. So, for example, the Lone Oak Bridge is scored 30 or something, and then it's compared against other potential projects for systems development charges for transportation, like compared against different by funding source.
Yeah, so while they all score 100 points, we're not comparing a general fund project with a transportation funded project. So the transportation projects stack up against each other. The general fund projects typically stack up against general fund projects.
Well, go ahead with your unrelated question.
All right, sorry. I have a few if they're short, but anyway. You're sure. Thank you, Chair. Just so I'm clear, on page 34, there are 2 fire stations. And I asked this question in writing, and you answered it. I just wanted to be clear that the difference between the 2 fire stations, the first is an $8 million fire station overall, and the second is $1 million because, and it says that it's for construction as a project description, but that's because the construction is past fiscal year 31. That's why it's not appearing.
That's correct.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Why don't you ask one more, and then I'll
Yes,
see if somebody else wants to interject.
Yeah, no, I'm related to that. I didn't see any projects for the library branches that were in the livability bond, and did I miss them? Are they not? Are they somewhere else?
I believe there are some projects in the budget document that have gone from the CIP into the budget. So I would have to look at exact pages to get you this, but yeah. Yep.
All right, so we will hear from staff at some future time or in a written document with regards to the library projects. I believe that Member Manville might have some more questions, but does another member of the committee, Member Nordijk.
Sure, thank you so much. So much good stuff in here. It's exciting to see so many projects underway, and I commend you and all the staff for keeping all these balls in the air. It's really impressive. On page 54, you mentioned the Pringle Creek Path Civic Center to Riverfront Park with funds committed for this upcoming fiscal year, 2027, for the design and construction of a pedestrian bridge crossing Pringle Creek under the Commercial Street Southeast Bridge and a new path along Pringle Creek from Commercial Street Southeast under the existing railroad bridge to Riverfront Park, where it also includes creek overlooks and an art wall. And I see no further funds committed in the subsequent years. So is the intention to complete this project this year? And if so, is Director Martin available to give us an ETA?
I believe he is.
So what you're seeing there is the year 2 funding. So we already have funds that are allocated to the project. And if you give me 1 second, I can tell you when it's going to be completed. It is under design right now, and in fact, I think we've gone through our first public outreach phase of holding a meeting and taking public comments on it. So it is coming along, but I'm not certain if it's going to be completed next year or the following year. So in 1 second, I will be able to tell you. Construction will begin in 2028 and it will be completed in 2029. 2028 and it will be completed in 2029.
I had one other question, if I may. This is on a different topic. Thank you, Director Martin. I saw there were several new projects added for the Salem Convention Center with a lot of the funding coming from convention funds. Can you just explain? I saw a little bit of a reference that This building is getting older. It gets a lot of use. I feel like I'm in that building every other week for one event or another. I'm just curious why now, and can you explain for those following at home, how are convention funds different than, say, general fund dollars or transportation dollars? What's the funding source exactly?
Sure. So this is the first year that convention center projects have been in the CIP, so that's why you see so many of them. The Salem Convention Center is funded by its own operating revenue, so tax money does not necessarily support the convention center. So it operates as an independent entity that sort of funds its own capital improvements.
I'm going to follow up on that. Is there a general fund transfer to the convention center funds?
No, there's not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions. The first one is on Project 1500, the Bush Pasture Park shelter improvement. I see that there's going to be, sorry, trying to read in the glare, the new restroom at the lower Oak Grove, but the upper Oak Grove is where I have the question. Is that restroom just going to be torn down? Is there going to be replaced? Is it going, and then my ultimate question is, will it be sufficient just to have one bathroom for the entire park? I know there's one attached to the Bush Arts Center, but I don't know if that's always open.
Hey, Parks Planning Manager Rob Rumnack here. The project in the CIP, just to be real clear, is a replacement of the restroom that currently exists at the top of the Derby track in the upper LaFell. Aside from that restroom, there are two restrooms in the park. There's one in the lower LaFell near Phillips Field, and then there is the one you mentioned that's associated with the art barn. The only one in the CIP currently is the replacement of the one at the top of the Derby track.
And then, thank you. Next question was on the HVAC replacement for the Center 50 Plus, and it's this one specifically because it caught my attention, but then also just trying to figure out the overall plan. When looking at replacing HVAC units, are we going to replace them with natural gas, or are they going to be heat pumps? And I was wondering that because I would assume heat pumps would align with the city's climate action plan, whereas natural gas would not.
I have someone coming down who can answer that question.
I don't have an answer on that one, so I'm looking for, there he is, thank you.
I was hoping you take that. Jim Schmidt, Technology Services Director. So we will replace the units what they are, typically, whether it's gas pack or electric. Some of the older buildings we have, like 60% plus, would probably be natural gas and or heat pump.
Is there a long-term plan then to transition all natural gas to heat pumps?
No, there's not. Because some of the old buildings do not have the electricity infrastructure to handle the new units.
All right, are there Member Manville?
Thank you. Chair. I'm curious about a project on page 62, the commercial street urban upgrades from Wiltsey to Wallen Drive. And it looks like there's an added travel lane in there. And I'm curious as to whether the city did a 830 analysis as required under the transportation planning rules, or am I misreading the transportation planning rules?
I'd ask the Public Works Director to come up for that one.
So when we requested this grant through ODOT, I'm not sure if we did that 830 rule that you're referring to, and I'm not that familiar with it myself. But this project was going to help solve some problems on South Commercial where we had a pavement R&R project, I believe it was last summer. We did what we could for sidewalks and bike lanes, but it's still kind of a mismatched roadway, and the plan for this grant was to try and allow us to put consecutive sidewalks on both sides of the street and bike lanes so that we have something that's consistent.
I'm questioning on that. So I'm trying to identify the location. I should know by the names, but is this where commercial goes down to one lane on either side?
I believe that's true, yes. Yeah.
So, sorry for jumping on, on you there, Member Mandel.
No, thank you. And it's possible that it was granted, and it was under, when it was granted, it was under $5 million. That's a trigger. So the 830 analysis, just so everyone understands, is you're required to study alternatives to roadway expansion for expensive road widenings. But I did have two final questions. Two final questions? Well, we'll see. We'll see. We'll see.
We'll see based on the answers.
Depends on where, where you take me, Chair. I guess the first is a question about things like the Lone Oak Bridge, where we've got it a couple of years out to do some design on that. Given the overall dearth of transportation funding, both at the local level and the state level and at the federal level, maybe international will help us. No, I'm just wondering if we're skeptical about our ability to actually fund large infrastructure projects like new bridges. Does it make sense to try to pull this from the CIP now, to wait a couple of years until we're actually going to spend money on it to see if money comes in? Like, I'm just curious as to whether it'd be prudent for me to just wait and see, or whether to try to say the money's not going to be there and we shouldn't be spending this sort of funds.
So on these grant projects, we will not start spending money until we have the grant in hand. So when we put this together, you know, this was a few months ago, and we know some of the issues the state is having with transportation funding. At the time we put this together, you know, we had approval for the grant, but we have not started any work yet. So before we would actually start any work on this type of project, we would end up having to negotiate an intergovernmental agreement with ODOT, bring that to City Council for adoption. And to go through that process, we would have to have the money in place. If they say, sorry, we struck that funding and moved it somewhere else because, you know, we had these other shortfalls, then we would not start the work and we wouldn't come to council with an IGA.
Just a follow-up clarification, I was referring to the Lone Oak one that looks like it's funded through SDCs, not the previous project I was mentioning. That's an ODOT grant.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought we were still on a grant-funded project. The Lone Oak Bridge, yeah, well, I mean, we know there's a transportation connection issue down there. We're addressing it with another project that's actually in the construction budget to allow a connection to Reese Hill Road, but we still have that north-south gap that's been there for many years. We put it out a few years to where we thought we would be able to do some design work. If we're not at a point next year where we think we can do that, we would likely move it out again. So we won't spend the money if we can't do the work. This is our best approximation of when we think we'll have funding in place and we could actually have resources start to do that work.
More questions?
Yeah, my last question is just a process question. Given there's $409 million here, does it change anything if we postpone a vote on this until next week? I don't want to postpone it too much, but like just the volume of stuff that I've been processing, it's like, oh, these are hundreds of millions of dollars, and we've had this for a week. So does it impact anything if we were to vote on the CIP next week instead of this week?
No, not particularly. What I'd recommend is you could continue the public hearing and leave the written record open if you wanted to receive more testimony, but then you could continue deliberations at your next meeting. I will say you do have additional material review at the next meeting also.
Josh, would that require a vote or just a consensus?
It's a good question.
Dan Atchison, City Attorney. I think it should be a vote, and I would just clarify with Josh whether he intended to say close the public hearing and keep the record open, or continue the hearing. Close the public hearing, keep the record. I think he said so. His recommendation, if you wanted to continue discussion on the CIP, would be to close the hearing, so no more oral testimony, but keep the record open so you could continue to receive written testimony.
Member Manville, if you're thinking about a motion, I would ask you to wait until we finish questions, and then we can address that, if that's okay. Yeah, Member Dixon.
I just have a question about the procedure. If you close the public hearing, would that preclude discussion among Budget Committee members?
No, it wouldn't.
Thank you. And I meant public discussion, not private.
Yes,
Thank
at
you.
your meeting, yes.
All right, yes, Ray Lucheks.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to thank the staff for adding the anticipated operating budget impact. I think that was based on our conversations last year, and just looking through it, I think it captures the spirit, and it's helpful when we make these decisions, so thank you.
I have two questions. One is a personal senility check. It seems to me that the CIP used to contain unfunded projects, and I don't see any unfunded projects in here. Am I correct in my memory, and was there a change of practice?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I think it might be correct in your memory. It's certainly not in mine, because it's been quite a while. But yeah, if you go back 15 or 20 years, yeah, there were unfunded projects. But it really doesn't make sense. We're not planning those projects if we don't have an identified funding source. So we really put that structure for the CIP to have identified funding sources. There are a few exceptions where we're anticipating potential grants, where we're projecting SDCs and it requires something else to happen. So there's other triggers, but they are identified funded projects.
So you're saying I'm not senile, I'm just old.
I'm not saying either of those things.
All right. My second question is, I wanted to ask a quick question just about Eco-Earth. I don't know if anybody here from Public Works that's been involved in those cost estimates. I've been to Eco-Earth not too long ago. It's a wonderful piece of public art. $1.5 million even today buys a really nice house. So I'm just curious how the cost estimate got to $1.5 million.
Good evening. My name is Aaron Kimsey, Assistant City Engineer. Yeah, so what I can tell you is we had an initial report done by a art restoration consultant back in 2020. And at that time, the globe was in better condition, honestly. And they gave us an estimate for essentially restoring and patching together what was there. And that's the reason why we have the roughly $300,000 to $400,000 that's in our current plan. Fast forward to essentially today, we just recently received a report from the same consultant, recognizing that there's been a significant amount of additional deterioration, a lot of organic growth on the globe. And so it's in a state now where they can't essentially patch it back together. They essentially have to remove all the tiles and then put the tiles back. And the other issue is that the acid ball has asbestos on it. And so in order, the way that it's deteriorating, they're unable to remove the tiles without exposing the asbestos. So that part of the estimate includes abatement of the acid ball. So because it's a very unique piece, obviously, part of that high cost is meticulously taking the tiles that are there apart and then essentially kind of recreating the ones that are missing and then putting back the ones that we still have. So.
My next question is not to infer that I want it to go anywhere, but is the asbestos cost the same if the ball is simply removed?
You mean like completely remove the ball altogether?
Yes. If it was abandoned or removed and some new eco ball or some other piece of public art was put in its place, I'm just curious if the asbestos cost is because of removing tiles and putting tiles back on, and whether it would be the same enormous amount of the cost for abatement if it was simply removed.
Well, I'm not sure. I don't know how we would go about removing the acid ball, to be honest. I mean, I'm sure it was brought in up the river. I'm sure we could send it back down the river. So I don't have, I don't have an estimate for that. I do know that the abatement is required. If we want to keep the ball and restore the art, the abatement is required. And so the other option is decommissioning the piece. It is part of the art collection that the city owns. And so that has a separate process that I'm not familiar with.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Member Nishioka.
Thank you. And on that same note, I'm wondering if there would be an opportunity to speak with the consultant and asking those questions about Eco Earth Ball to find out if they have any concept of total removal, what that might cost, so that we could potentially see if there's options to restore it in the sense of bringing it back, but not using the contaminated ball.
We certainly could look at other options. Our focus to this point has been how do we restore it? How do we bring it back to its former glory? And so their focus has really been just that. And so I still think the asbestos, when you remove the tiles, you're going to expose the asbestos, and so there is a health risk there. So if you were to put something else back, I mean, there's been a lot of conversations about maybe you don't do tile, maybe it's not a mosaic at the end of the day, maybe it's some other material that could still represent a globe, but not be tile. I'm not sure. So I think that might be up for another art conversation on what that might look like. So, but yeah, we certainly could ask the consultant to look at what some other options might be.
Is abatement required as tiles are falling off?
No, the tiles. So there's multiple layers there, and it's far enough away from if it didn't have the fence around it and people could go up and like poke at it, and that would be exposure. But in its current state, it's not an issue. Yeah.
Thank you. Member Brown had a question, and then Member Fuller.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. My first question is on in regards to page 8. So page 8, it mentions the Wallace Natural Area Enhancement. Is that sidewalk we were talking about? We meaning the counselors? Is that what that is? The sidewalk in the natural area?
I see someone coming up to answer that question.
Page 8.
Hi. Yes, this was a project that was initiated as a mid-year project at council, and at the council meeting we did discuss that we would be proceeding with the design of a paving a path through the natural area. However, we have taken a step back, and currently what we are doing with the project is we are initiating a planning process. So we're about to have consultants do some analysis, and then we're going to engage the community in discussion about what is the vision for the natural area. As part of that work, we will have some more detailed look at the potential of routing a path in that area. We might look at alternatives, but I guess what the point I want to make is we're not starting the project with a foregone conclusion that we will end this planning process with a paving project through the natural area.
Mm-hmm. And that project, was it a $1.2 million deal?
Initially, that's what we estimated the paving project to be, and right now, I believe the CIP or the city budget, it's a much lower amount. It's less than $250,000, and that's proportionate to the planning process we are doing now.
Got it. Mr. Chair, can I follow up? Sure. So, Mr. Romanek, so my next question is in regards to page 10, we are removing several projects and we're adding projects. For the removal of the projects, several of them are in the northeast area. How do we come to the decision that we're going to remove some? How do we get there?
That would be driven by the CIP score that James spoke about earlier. So we would look at the score and essentially the lower scoring projects drop off.
Right, and I do recognize the score, the process. I'm familiar with all of that. I think my concern is that there's several in Northeast that are being removed, and several of them involve pedestrian safety. So I'm still stuck as to the why.
Generally, when projects are removed, it's because all the funding is in place and it does no longer need to show up in the CIP. So if you look at on page 10 in the comments section for those removed transportation projects, the project is budgeted, no additional funds required at this time. So it's not that we are not doing the project, it's that we have all the funding in place now, and it'll actually be in the capital construction budget, which you'll be looking at after this public hearing. So the project is still happening. So unless there was a note that says it was rescored and it fell out, that's not what the case is.
So although it says removed, it's not technically removed.
Removed from the CIP because now it's fully funded. This was a question that came up a few years ago. People would see projects in the CIP and then all of a sudden it would be gone. And they weren't tracking that, hey, it's actually in the construction fund now, it's fully funded. So this removed and added was a way we tried to help explain, hey, you're not seeing it here because it's fully funded. Obviously, we didn't hit the mark because there's questions, so I think we have some work to do with it next time.
It's always me that finds this out. So I guess the final thing is that when you compare this year's book to last year's book, I do want to give the staff credit. Things are definitely more clear and easy to follow. I think that this is the only area that really gets me, like, it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, we have on here the Gussie Vale Commons pedestrian improvements. We put that on here, we meaning us collectively, and we just opened that particular apartment complex a week and a half ago. Or 2 weeks ago. So I'm just, you know what I'm saying? It's like we opened something, but now it's on the removal side, so.
Yeah. So what I can share is that project is fully funded. It's in the construction budget. We're working on design now with the hopes to get the construction completed this fall.
Okay. Thank you, Director. I yield the floor, Mr. Chair.
Member Fuller?
We kind of got away from the topic of the acid ball, but I just wanted to.
It went down the river.
I just wanted to make a quick comment, and that is that, Linda, you described the value of urban and public art perfectly. Thank you for that. That was all.
Thank you. Other questions, comments with regards to the CIP? This is the CIP hearing. Member Belichick.
I'm just following up on Member Brown's comments. Thank you, Chair. It sounds like most of these projects that are on the remove list are being done. There are a couple that have actually been removed or postponed. Some are in the North Salem, Northeast Salem area. AC Gilbert Discovery Village Roof hopefully can last another year before it needs to be replaced. And Hammond Park got noted as their higher priority projects pushing this down the road. So when I'm thinking about it as things that are moved from the CIP, but that's because they're being done, they don't need to be in the CIP anymore, versus things that are being pushed down the road, the roof, Hammond Park, any other ones that should be pointed out, I guess, for the good of the order.
Yeah, that's correct. The vast majority of these, like the Public Works Director said, are just the funding has moved into the budget, and the sort of conveyor belt of funding that is the CIP sort of dumped that funding into the budget. But there are a few projects, you're correct, especially recently with water issues. Some of those water projects have been moved down to make room for some mitigation efforts at Detroit, things like that. They do happen where we move around funding and things drop off the CIP. But yeah, the vast majority of them are just because they were sort of, the funding is now in the budget, so they're no longer in the CIP.
Perhaps in the next CIP, there could be a section dedicated solely to projects that have moved to the Capital Projects Fund.
Yeah, we'll take that under advisement.
Member Matthews.
Also, just while we're kind of talking about the ward-specific aspects, is there, I'm kind of looking through the priorities of scoring, and I'm wondering, I see like a geographic equity in some of these. I don't see it, I guess it's in all of these, but where does the weighting system on that rate? So like, for instance, if I'm looking here just at what wards are getting more treatment than others, for instance, like Ward 1 has 23 projects, Ward 2 has 37, Ward 3 has 7. And so when it's kind of, we're looking at that equity aspect across the geography, where does that kind of play in on a scoring weighting system?
So with the equity scoring, it's 25 points out of the 100. It's actually not geographically focused like, oh, we want to make sure each region of the city has the same number of projects. It's based on census tracts, and then what disadvantaged parts of our community are located in those census tracts. So there's 8 criteria we look at. It was kind of based off the Salem-Keizer area transit system model. And so we apply that criteria against each of the census tracts. And if it's a tract that checks almost all the boxes, it gets a higher score. And so it would get 25 points. If it's a census tract that, gets the least amount of scores, it's going to get a very low score, 0 or 1. So it's kind of weighted between 0 and 25 points.
Chair Teigen, I don't know if I've missed you at any point. Do you have any questions?
No, thank you. Appreciate being asked, though.
Are there other questions? Remember, we are in the CIP. Member Brown.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. My final question, I suppose, and this is really for Director Bryan. So Director, in the past few years, we've been talking a lot about our infrastructure. You've given us tours. And I think the last time we were in this space, we also discussed, what happens when there's a water main that breaks. And we recall last year, your team hastily got there, fixed everything. Within the CIP, are we discussing any plan that helps us to replace all those old pipes underneath the city?
So we have a scoring system based on numerous things. So there could be capacity needs in the system. There could be maintenance records that show, hey, we've had a lot of maintenance on this line. We probably should look at replacing it. We enter work orders anytime we have a failure in a system, and so we track those things. And so we have categories of what's called rehabilitation and replacement. And one of the members had asked a question about, what's the percentage of pipes that are in need of replacement? Correct. Are you actually replacing with the budget? And we did our best to try and answer that question. We don't have all the data we need to really know everything we need to know about our system. And so what we're trying to do, and there are some projects you see in the budget, is do more investigations on our pipelines so that we know what type of condition they're in. One of the key areas, and I don't want to I could talk about this for a long time, so I'll try and keep it somewhat brief, is our major sanitary sewer interceptors and force mains. Big pipes, hard to get in and televise and see what the conditions are. We've hired some specialty consultants to take a look at a first group this last year. We're going to be looking at more coming up. We need that data to really know what the condition of our pipes are. And so, generally speaking, just like anything you buy, generally there's a life to it. And we look at the ages of our systems and say, this pipe's only 50 years old. We should have another 25 to 50 years to go. But not all things are equal. Sometimes things fail early. Sometimes things last longer than you expect. So we're always trying to get more data so that we can try and keep up keep up with the curve, but I can tell you it's not a perfect system, and we're not perfect in how we're doing this, but we are allocating the majority of our funding towards existing infrastructure that we're replacing versus adding new.
And you said the consultants, you have some that you're working with that will come in and do that for us, so we'll have that data later on down the road to look at?
Correct, yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Member Nordic.
Thank you. I want to talk about sidewalks. Pages 55 and 56, I see 5.4 million in funds committed for sidewalk infill and 8.84 million for sidewalk replacement, and a little bit more money for the Union Street bikeway. Does that capture those two items I identified, project number 1519 and 1520? Is that the totality of sidewalk funding that we have committed? And the reason I ask is I walk a lot of sidewalks around Salem, and I know you could probably spend the entire CIP on just sidewalks. Isn't that right, Director Martin?
That's correct.
Right.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's a frequent, community concern that I get. So I want to make sure that when I get questions from the public about the state of our sidewalks, is this the totality of funds we have dedicated, the 5.4 for sidewalk infill and the 8.84 for sidewalk replacement? Is that accurate?
So for the sidewalk infill, that's fairly accurate, and I say that because we had a special project in the 2022 Safety and Livability Bond Program that was focused just on it. We also had grants for sidewalk infill projects, not to the amount that we need, but there are occasional projects that we do infill work with. When it comes to replacement, what you're seeing here is what's funded with the bond, but in addition to that, we do I think it's about $2 million a year of sidewalk replacement work with our city resources, our in-house, about $2 million. Yeah, I know I have that number here broken down. I think it's about roughly $3 million. So in addition to what you see here, there's an additional $3 million a year that's going towards sidewalk replacement and maintenance.
I have a quick general question. I noticed that the threshold is $100,000 in order for it to be included in the CIP. So obviously, if I'm buying a piece of equipment and it's over $100,000 or more, then it'd be a CIP project. What if I'm buying 10 items that are $10,000 a piece? And there's a reason why I'm asking that question.
It depends. So CIP projects exclude rolling stock. The one exception would be, I think we've shown fire apparatus in there before, just due to the magnitude. But in general, if we're replacing 1 or 2 or 3 items and they don't add up to that, they're not going to appear. If we're replacing a system, they might appear. So it's not consistent how they show up in the CIP. It is consistent how we capitalize them.
I'm specifically asking because I thought it was odd in the convention center, there's a project in here for table replacement. And that seemed like an odd thing to be in a CIP project or plan.
Yeah, agreed. So as Mr. Wharton has mentioned, this is the first year the convention center projects have been in the CIP. I think we're still figuring out what the threshold and tolerance is there for those projects.
Okay, thank you. Other questions on the CIP? I am not seeing any other questions on the CIP. Therefore I am closing the public hearing. All right, at this time, we would be entertaining a motion, and I would say we're entertaining any motion that the committee would like to do, likely either a motion in favor of accepting the FY 2027 through FY 2031 capital improvement plan, or perhaps a motion to close the public hearing, but keep it open for written testimony and continue discussion at the next meeting. So the floor is open for members to make motions. Member Manville.
I would move to close the public hearing and keep the record open.
I'll second.
Member Manville, would you like to speak to your motion?
Sure. I don't want to draw things out too much, but I do want to take a moment to consider the answers we've heard tonight and look a little bit more into the legal issues about 830 on that project and a couple of other things. So would be open to voting next week, but would love a little bit more time.
Is there other discussion on the motion? Member Dixon.
Could you repeat the motion, please?
I move to close the public hearing and keep the record open.
Thank you.
Yes, Member Brown.
Just for clarity, Member Manville asked a question earlier in regards to the library. There's an opportunity for us to come back to that. Is that the plan?
I think that's encompassed in
yeah,
we would have an answer from staff before we voted on the CIP.
So it's a part of that motion. Somewhere in there, we'll talk about the library.
My understanding is we can talk further among ourselves at the next meeting.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes, there would be a further opportunity for Budget Committee discussion on the CIP at the next meeting, if the motion passes. Member Belichick.
We already closed the public comments, so.
We closed the public hearing, but I understand that we can open it up for written testimony. We can continue it for written testimony only.
I see. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments on the motion before we vote on the motion? All those in favor of the motion, I'm sorry, Member Gwynn.
I just want to confirm with our city attorney. So we'll be able to have further discussion next week, not just emailing staff questions? I'm confused.
So the motion would close the hearing, so there's no more oral testimony, and continue the written record so people can continue to submit written testimony. At next Wednesday's Budget Committee meeting, we would have that as an action item where you can have deliberations. We wouldn't receive any testimony. Obviously, the written testimony that's submitted over the next week would be included, but you wouldn't receive any more oral testimony, but you can discuss amongst the committee any item relative to the CIP.
Member Gwynn?
And we'll be able to ask staff questions too then?
Yes.
All right. I don't believe we need to restate the motion. I think we all know what the motion is. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those in opposition of the motion say no.
No.
It says for members that say no to raise their hand, but I don't think that's necessary. I believe it's just Member Teigen or Chair Teigen. Thank you. So the motion passes. We are now at item 7 on the agenda, which will cover the Urban Renewal Agency budget, as well as 2 results areas of the city budget. We continue on the topic of infrastructure with a presentation by CFO Eggleston on the safe, reliable, and efficient infrastructure result area.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. The agenda I have shows the safe, reliable, and efficient infrastructure before the URA.
I am reading off the agenda that I have. Josh?
Yeah, we're going to cover the infrastructure results area first, and then we'll cover the URA and strong and diverse economy. So I apologize for any confusion.
Okay. I'm just reading my script.
We wrote the script, so I apologize.
Take it away, Josh.
The safe, reliable, and efficient infrastructure is the first result area we'll review this evening. This result area begins on page 114 for the operating budget and page 224 for the construction budgets. The result area's total operating budget is $147.6 million. The construction funds have a total budget of $145.2 million, and there's 195.63 full-time equivalent positions included in this result area. There are two career position changes we wanted to highlight. The first is a new engineer position to assist with delivery of utility projects. The second is a transfer of administrative analysts from the airport fund for the utility fund. And as mentioned on the slide, it's going to allocate 50% of their time back to the airport fund. And I did want to note there's also some seasonal dollars added for maintenance at Guerin Island for landscaping and ground maintenance, saving operators to perform more technical work. There are a few service enhancements or highlights that we wanted to share. The first is $100,000 of additional funds to relamp failing or malfunctioning streetlights that are included in the fiscal year 2027 budget. The second is the Safe Streets for All action plan is continuing. It's a comprehensive safety plan for all road users with the goal of eliminating deaths and serious injuries from traffic accidents. The plan will identify current safety challenges and provide a framework for future safety investments to progress toward this goal. In addition, the city is seeking software to track and manage the city's fiber optic infrastructure and usage, first looking at existing software tools and then expanding the search if existing products don't meet that need. And then a grant-funded study is underway to create a conceptual design for a safe pedestrian and bicycle crossing of Highway 22 between Lancaster Drive and Corden Road is included in the budget. Project funding will be sought after a preferred solution is identified. We've talked about water lines a little bit this evening already. Several water line replacements are funded in fiscal year 2027, upgrading old cast iron or steel water line with ductile iron, which has superior durability, strength, and service life. The Davis Road pump station will be upgraded for additional capacity and to prepare for future development. And then one existing pump station is being upgraded, as well as design and construction of a new permanent pump station. Both stations will connect to the City of Kaiser's water system to provide a backup water source for Salem residents. For utility maintenance and operations, the fiscal year 2027 budget continues the $400,000 allocation for the Utility Assistance Program. This increase was requested by the City Council in November of 2024. The Stormwater Master Plan effort began work in fiscal year 2022 and is scheduled for completion in 2027. This work focuses on an inventory and condition assessment of stormwater system facilities and identified capital projects that reduce flood risk and support land use. And then I'll already mention this evening, preparation for the drawdown of the Detroit Reservoir by the Army Corps of Engineers continues with more funding dedicated to ensuring cities' drinking water needs are met during the project. The first drawdown is expected in 2026, late 2026. And with that, staff are available for questions on this result area. Thank you.
All right, just to be clear, that was a report on result area, safe, reliable, and efficient infrastructure. Does the committee have any questions on that result area for staff? Member Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned completion of the Stormwater Master Plan in 2027. Is that the plan itself or the work that's already in an existing master plan?
That's just for the plan itself.
Just the planning part?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. And then a couple more questions. In the agenda narrative for the first meeting, there was a reference to the City Council meeting sometime this year to discuss options for transportation funding. Did I read that correctly?
That is correct, yes.
And it included, one of the options it included was a local option gas tax. So the two questions are, what's the timing for the transportation discussion? And what other options are on the list for discussion besides a gas tax?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I'm not sure if that work is ready for display, but the gas tax has been a continuing theme through each of our revenue task force, but it could be on the decline. We'll see.
What was the last part?
It's not as popular as it once was, believe it or not.
Thank you. So you expect that discussion to be on the transportation funding to be completed this year, the discussion part?
The initial discussion, I believe, is scheduled for a work session later this year. Yes.
Thank you.
In August. Thank you.
Member Manville.
Yeah, thank you. Do you have a status update on the transportation system plan update?
I do not, but we're going to get some help.
So we made it through the regional scenario plan, which was the phase 1, and we've negotiated a scope of work with a consultant, and we're working with ODOT on an IGA so that we can start utilizing their funding and that consultant to start the work. So we're hopeful that we can start that work this summer.
Awesome, thank you. Other transportation questions. So generally, I really appreciate all the work that the city's doing on this. Like we talk about public safety, but safe water to drink and safe roads to travel on and safe sidewalks, like these are saving lives. So I really appreciate all the work the city's been doing and the progress on transportation safety and the dedication for Streets for All. Just two questions on that. One, you talk about the downtown no turn on red studies. And I'm wondering if there have been discussions of just like, hey, it'd be easier for everyone if we all understood going downtown, none of the intersections are no turn on red, instead of doing it intersection by intersection. Has that been a discussion?
I don't think that's been a discussion at this point. I think there are places where you have more conflicts than others, and so I don't think we've really looked at just making it universal everywhere downtown. The other part of that study is looking at the speeds, and so the proposal was to drop the speed limit down to 20 miles per hour, so we're studying the progression analysis to make sure that we're not causing a bunch of congestion, which it doesn't look like we are. So the plan actually is for that work to happen this fall. So when I say the work, actually making the changes, not doing the design and the analysis.
Member Manville?
One final question. You talked about doing some signage on four-way stops out in the North Star neighborhood, I believe, four-way intersections. And in planning school, we kind of learned that unsigned four-way intersections are actually the data, so they're often safer because drivers are scared and they approach those with caution. Is there something in particular about this neighborhood where the data don't show that, or there's just enough public demand that, hey, I don't like unsigned intersections, or is there something that's, or has the science changed since I was in planning school? Because it was a while ago.
Yeah, so you're absolutely correct. Four-way stops are not required. In fact, we get questions frequently. We just had one in the last week about, hey, why don't you put a stop sign here? And we look at several things. We look at what's the accident history, are there site obstructions? There are things that definitely trigger a stop sign. If those are not present, we generally will let that be. However, that being said, when we embarked on our neighborhood traffic management plan a couple of years ago, we were looking at ways to try and slow down vehicles in neighborhoods. And you can do that multiple ways. You can put speed humps in, you can put radar signs in that show how fast people are going. Another way to do it, though, is to put together an organized stop sign plan where you can actually control that speed by using stop signs. And so the one up in Northeast Salem and North Star, it fell underneath that neighborhood stop sign plan. And so we're looking at doing that in neighborhoods throughout the city each year.
Member Cohen.
Thank you. I'd actually like to follow up on the neighborhood stop sign plan. And I have a series of questions on this, if you don't mind, Chair.
Go ahead.
Okay, so The City's Safer Streets program, I love. It's an ArcGPS website in which you can go in, zoom into your cross where you want it to be, put in, I need a stop sign here, or something like that. My question is a series of questions. So what I don't like about that program is that unlike the capital improvements projects dashboard, the report a neighborhood traffic concern portal basically just shows where the stop sign or speeding concern is and if it's pending or not for scoring and proposed solution. There's no project description, there's no dollars associated to it, and so it just leaves a lot of information to be desired, I would say. And the same I would say about the active construction projects. It just shows locations. I would love to have a dashboard, one dashboard to rule them all, in which you can have all of the capital improvement projects, the active construction, report neighborhood traffic thing, because a lot of them align. That shows when it's funded, the status of it, when it's going to be completed. Because right now we basically, if you're a nerd like me, you can go on and you can look at like, you know, the flow chart, and the flow chart tells you specifically how your stop sign or speed cushion is going to be put in there. And so I'll just say last year, me and 20 other of my fellow residents at the corner of Baxter and Reed by Pringle Elementary School and West Bennett Park put in a request to have a stop sign there, four-way stop sign. I went back today and I looked at it and they all still say pending. So the question, and thank you for allowing me to get into this, is what would it take to have more information on the dashboards? When should people or how should people expect to see updates? How is the city going to communicate these updates? Is it through neighborhood association meetings, other? Just want to know, and it's not just my ward. I looked at all the wards, and all the wards have pending projects probably from a year ago. So how often is that updated? Is there a way in which we can communicate that we are updating these projects? Thank you.
I would say we have some work to do on our web pages, especially when it comes to the transportation and the Salem motion. You can go a lot of different directions. We have some work to do there. We are working on project management software that we're using for our capital project delivery that hopefully is going to have a dashboard that people can see, so you would be able to look at a project in the budget that you're looking at now and go onto a dashboard and see what's the status of it. So that is a work in progress, something we're trying to implement. It does have hiccups as we're seeing as we're going through it, but ultimately that will be our goal. With the neighborhood traffic projects, these are separated generally because they're very small in nature. So the neighborhood traffic management plan, when we're putting a stop sign implementation plan together, you're talking maybe $10,000. When you're putting speed humps out, speed humps are about $5,000 a piece. So you put 3 of them out, it's $15,000. So it doesn't meet that threshold of, hey, is it $100,000 or more to make it into the CIP? And so we've kind of treated them more like kind of like our maintenance work, because it's small in scale, small in nature. And so each year we come up with a list of projects, and then we go out to the neighborhood associations and follow that chart you were showing to try and get consensus on whether we should do it or not. But I'm not sure how we're reporting back to the community so that they can look and see, hey, these are the ones that we're doing this year. I will look into that, though, so that we can try and pull that together. So, yes, we do have some work to do there.
Member Brown.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Mr. Director, I have a couple things. The first one is, I want just our members to know that I'm referring to page 168. And in that page, in the middle of the paragraph, it says this, just so people can hear it. Public Works crews also install 38 stop signs in the North Star neighborhood. And I just want to highlight that for our members and those folks that are in the room and at home, that I'm giving Public Works a tremendous applause for this. because this is an area that belongs to us, but this group does not have a neighborhood association. And so yours truly, along with Public Works, work with some parents in that area to get those stop signs. There are schools there, they've had accidents there, and so I just want to say thank you to you and your team of engineers for putting those stop signs in the North Star neighborhood. They are highly appreciative of that particular work, so I want to highlight that for you, so thank you. And right behind that, on the next page on 169, we're discussing the green bicycle markings, right? Can you walk us through how we decide who gets those particular bicycle markings in the neighborhood? Like how do we arrive there and say, oh, we're going to put one here versus here? How do we do that?
Absolutely. So, excellent question. With the green bike paint, we were fortunate in that ODOT did a pilot study of our bike facilities in Salem a few years ago, and they put together a list of recommended locations where the green bike paint should go. So we used that study and we used their priority list. Where we've been focusing on is where there's right turn lanes, and so providing that striping, between the right turn lane and the through lane, as that was one of the most dangerous aspects of an intersection. So each year we're just trying to, pick off 5 to 10 or so of those bike markings that we can get done. So we're just kind of slowly trying to go through and get that work done.
And would it be fair to say that the places that are listed on page 169, would it be fair to say that there are a lot more?
There are a lot more, yes, that's correct.
Got it.
Yeah.
And is the plan down the road to share those with us, or is that too long of a list?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Is the plan later on to share that list with us, or is it too exhaustive to share?
I don't think it's too exhaustive to share. If we haven't already shared it, we can certainly share that with the group.
Okay.
There's a full report that was put together that we could share.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Director. I yield the floor, Mr. Chair.
All right, are there questions on this results area? I don't see any, but before you go, Josh, this might have been discussed last week. This is more of a general question. It might have been discussed last week. I'm very appreciative of the sections where you're saying what's new and then staff changes. Is what's new, is that all encompassing? Meaning if there's an area of that particular proportion of the budget that has been reduced significantly, would that be highlighted, for example?
Not necessarily. I think the only area where there was a trade-off discussion last week was at the library, but there's no other significant reduction anywhere else in the budget.
Okay. I'm appreciative of what's there. For me, it's more of a, what are the significant changes in this area over the prior year as opposed to just what's new? That's just from me.
Yeah, so that would fall under there as a highlight, maybe not a service enhancement, but it would be a change. Okay. So if there was something significant we were recommending it, we would highlight it. Yes.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. We will now have a presentation from Budget Manager Kaylee Leinenbach on both the Urban Renewal Agency proposed budget and the Strong and Diverse Economy Result Area. Due to the link between the two budgets, questions for both will be taken at the conclusion of the Strong and Diverse Economy presentation. Take it away.
Good evening, Budget Committee. My name is Callie Leinenbach, and I'm here to present to you this evening the Strong and Diverse Economy Result Area as well as the Urban Renewal Agency budget. The city programs start on page 171, and we'll review those first and then move into the URA. So on the city side, primary services for this result area include tourism and convention promotion, economic development support, airport operations, parking management and enforcement, and management of city-owned lease spaces. The proposed budget for fiscal year 2027 is just under 17 million, and there are 21.35 full-time equivalent positions in this result area. So moving on to the URA, the Salem Urban Renewal Agency is a distinct corporation with the mayor and city council serving as its board of directors and the city manager as executive director. City staff, primarily in urban development, support urban renewal programs through an intergovernmental agreement with the city. The purpose of URAs is to encourage redevelopment in areas it might not otherwise occur without public investment. So there's the 8 urban renewal areas are featured on this slide, and from north to south, they are North Gateway, which is the largest at 926 acres, and it is scheduled to end property tax collections in fiscal year 2027. Riverfront Downtown, which is the oldest area formed in 1975. There's West Salem and South Waterfront. Jory Apartments, which is the newest and smallest area, established in 2020. McGillcrest, where improvements to McGillcrest Street are underway and tax collections have ended. Fairview, which also ended tax collections quite a while ago. And Mill Creek Industrial Park, also scheduled to end collections in 2027. So as noted, there are 3 areas shown here that have recently stopped or will stop collecting property tax increment in fiscal year 2027. And this slide shows the increase in assessed value between when the property tax base was frozen at the inception of each URA compared to the most recent assessed value information. And we just wanted to highlight this significant growth in assessed value in each area. And since these URAs are no longer collecting taxes, this means that there will be increased property tax collections based on these higher assessed values to all the taxing jurisdictions. And this also benefits the city's general fund, which will receive higher property tax revenue as well. So there are 4 funds that make up the URA budget. The debt service fund, and that's where the property tax increment is collected for each urban renewal area. And then the expenditure budget of $22.5 million is for debt service payments and also returning excess revenues to the counties for areas that are no longer collecting taxes. The Capital Improvements Fund receives the proceeds from borrowings in the debt service fund to pay for construction and improvement projects. The expense budget for this fund is $40.3 million, which is significantly less than the resource budget to reflect anticipated expenses. And then a question came up last week regarding the reimbursement to the general fund for staff time spent working on URA-related projects. So as recommended in the URA performance audit, the cost recovery methodology was adjusted and simplified, which resulted in a higher general fund reimbursement and corresponding higher expense in the URA. In fiscal year 2025, for example, before the adjustment, the reimbursement to the general fund was about $1 million. And with a new method, fiscal year 2026 is estimated to be 1.6 million. And then in 2027, the budget is 1.7 million for the reimbursement. So the Convention Center Fund, the proposed budget there is $8 million for operations. And then the gain loss reserve, which we talked about a little bit earlier, the proposed budget there is 1.4 million. And this reserve was created to cover an operating shortfall or to fund repairs or major improvement projects at the Convention Center. There's a goal of a $4 million balance in the reserve, and fiscal year 2027 continues to meet that goal. At least the projections continue to meet that goal. And new in this year's budget is a project page for the gain loss reserve and those projects that are funded there. So you can find that in the budget book. A few service enhancements and highlights. So beginning in July 2025, the downtown transitioned to paid on-street parking. The City Council approved refunding the downtown parking tax payments for 2026, and finance staff are currently working through all of those to get those out to downtown businesses, and also ending the assessment of the tax for future years. In 2026, the airport contracted with a third-party provider to collect landing and tie-down fees. This program utilizes publicly available technology to track aircraft activity, send invoices, and collect payments from operators. So with the seismic retrofit of City Hall, urban development will be moving back to Civic Center from a downtown lease space under the Chemeketa Parkade, and this will free up that space to be renovated and leased out to other businesses or entities that want to locate downtown. So this will also temporarily reduce the revenue to the parking leasehold fund, but it will also save the general fund ongoing rent costs for that space. Also related to this move is $1 million budgeted in Riverfront Downtown for improvement to these tenant spaces. Urban development staff are finalizing agreements with selected developers for both Block 45 and Block 50. These high-profile downtown projects will deliver market rate and affordable multifamily housing along with commercial space. Block 50 is coordinating with the Department of Environmental Quality to finalize environmental monitoring, while both development teams are working to secure financing and investors to advance these projects. And finally, a proposed new urban renewal area is currently under consideration and will be discussed at a City Council work session in May. If approved, it would be called North Waterfront URA, and it abuts Riverfront Downtown, moving north along Front Street. And that concludes my presentations. We're happy to have any questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there questions of staff on urban renewal or strong and diverse economy result area? Member Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Budget Manager Kelly, how are you?
Great. Thank you
Good.
for asking.
Hey, so can you walk us through a couple of things? So on slide 13, the convention center gain and loss reserve is a 1.4 million. I know we own that particular facility. Can you walk us through the loss reserve, please? Or is there a page that's on?
Yes, let me grab. Wrong book. Hold on. Thank you. Apologies. So it's near the back of the small budget book. Let me get to the page here. You can see the gain loss reserve financial detail on page 61, and then the project pages are on pages 62 and 63.
Member Brown, do you have a follow-up question?
So Dr. Brown, it's in the URA, it's in this URA budget. Is that the one you have?
Book? Okay. Yeah, so my question is this. No, I don't have a question about that. I'm good. I do have one more, though.
Go ahead.
And this is it's in the big book on 148, because I think that's still within the section we're looking at, correct?
Let me get there. Did you say 148?
148.
Let me see.
It's the, I think I'm on the wrong page.
Oh, okay. I think that page 148 is in the infrastructure section.
We're not discussing that right now.
We aren't.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'm always ahead somewhere. Thank you, Manager Calley.
I have a question with regards to the airport fund, which I believe was in this result area.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Did I read somewhere that the airport fund is being budgeted as if an additional commercial carrier was going to be found? and therefore it's at a $3.5 million level, which is similar to previous years.
Yes, that is correct.
And so the actual expenditure budget would be much less if a commercial carrier was not identified.
That's correct as well, yes.
And then specifically, my concern is with the $752,000 transfer from the general fund. If there is no commercial carrier, do we know what the level of transfer would be from the general fund?
I would expect it to be $100,000 less because part of that transfer is for an MRG, which is a minimum revenue guarantee to go towards an airline.
So even without an airline, there would still be a $650,000 transfer from the general fund to the airport.
That's correct.
Okay, that's a lot of money. All right, Member Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is an expression of concern more than a specific question. One of the areas of focus of the city's economic development work broadly is job growth. And I look at census data, and my analytical skills aren't that great, but what I see in census data citywide, not just in the URAs, is that the poverty rate is higher than the national average, and median household income and per capita income are lower than the national average. I do know that the city develops information about the impact on property values from its URA work and may do the same thing for its broader economic development work. But I am concerned that, well, I would like to see more of an emphasis on the impact on working people and everyday families in the community. Does the city, for example, have targets for the poverty rate or the median household income or the per capita income or other indicators that would give a sense of what difference its economic development efforts are having on the lives of everyday people? So I would like to see more of that. And I hope we can get there.
Member Dixon, embedded in everything you said, I think there was a question. You said, does the city currently have means of determining whether or not those measurements that you discussed are impacted by city expenditures in economic development?
And it is somewhat rhetorical because I've gotten a written response.
Meaning you know that the answer is no. Okay, all right. I didn't have the cheat
Thank you for clarifying on that.
Okay.
It apparently is technical, and it's something that I would like to see some work on.
So that is a desire put out there with regards to changes.
It is. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Member Dixon. Member Manville.
Yeah, just a follow-up there. And I'm sorry I didn't see the written answer to you, Member Dixon, but is that something we could add in the result area statistics in some way, or does that not make sense?
It's something staff can look at and consider and bring back. One challenge we have is the exact question, right? If you expend more dollars, if you increase the input, if the output changes, in some cases, those larger economic statistics, while interesting, even if we increase twofold, it might not be super impactful, but it's certainly something we can look at.
I think it would also be difficult to identify that A was directly correlated to B.
Yeah, and if I may, I think Member Dixon, one of the questions he asked, and it's in the written comments, was specific to the job growth and impact to GDP within the urban rural areas. And that's not something that we can drill down to feasibly. Certainly we have that information for the wider Salem area.
Member Manville.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. A follow-up to kind of your question about the airport and the assumption that commercial air service is going to be there July 1st. Most of the budget is structured as to certain incomes and like known incomes and known expenditures. And this is there something about commercial air service that feels at all likely to happen soon that we're not aware of? Is this an aspiration and, hey, if we plan for it, people will notice it? And
we don't have anything lined up for July 1st. So when we were putting the budget together, we were looking at different scenarios. And with the unknowns at the time, we felt maybe we should go with this as this scenario, and then we'll see what happens over time. We did just recently attend a commercial air service conference, and that was, I think there's 7 different airlines. Some of them are showing interest. Council's going to see a grant application to try and get FAA funding to boost the MRG that we're offering. If we're successful with that, that may get us over the finish line to get an airline here, but I don't think we'll know the results of that until probably this fall, which is not going to help us right now. And just with the volatility in oil, and what's happening with airlines. We all read and hear about Spirit Airlines and whether they're going to make it or not. We've heard that some of these low-cost carriers are waiting to jump on those Spirit routes if Spirit does go under. And so there's just a lot of stuff moving, a lot of moving pieces, I guess I would say. So it's going to take some time to see how that works out.
Member Gwynn?
I believe the airport is more regional, right? It's not just Salem. I believe the Kaiser City Council just agreed to submit a letter in support of that grant application. Am I correct?
We have reached out to multiple people. I haven't heard the latest on that. I can tell you that there was an airline that submitted a letter of support as well. So we're trying to get as many regional partners as we can.
Is it on the airport? Okay, then I want to jump in on the airport. It's more of a request for information. I don't know. I assume that at some point there'd been a survey done of similarly sized cities with similar type of airport structure. I mean, we're similar to Eugene, but our airport is nothing like Eugene's. My question is, comparing us to other similarly sized airports / cities and the amount of subsidy from the general fund into that airport. I don't know if that's been done before. I don't know if that data is available.
I would have to do some research. We may have it. I just don't have that at my fingertips.
All right, thank you. Member Bailey-Checks and then Member Manville.
Still on the airport, Chair, if you're digging in information about how Salem's airport compares to other airports, public airports around the state, maybe some information about which ones are owned by a port district versus the city that they serve. I'd be interested in knowing that. I think that question came up a couple of years ago, and I don't recall ever getting an answer for it.
Okay, we can certainly get that answer and share it with you for your next meeting.
Thank you.
And before I go to you, Mr. Manville, I just want to say, are there other questions on the airports? I want to keep the airport theme going. Member Nishioka.
Thank you. Not so much, well, maybe more for some clarity. We are, as Councilor or Member Gwynn was saying, regional. We've, mid-Willamette Valley. And we did have support from the county for the minimum revenue guarantee. And I think it's also important for us to realize that if we are able to get a commercial air service for even just a few flights a week, we jump into a higher opportunity for grants. Without commercial air service, we have far fewer opportunities, and many of those grants are really to do infrastructure maintenance. So maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Budget Committee Member Nishioka. So if you have more than 10,000 enplanements a year of commercial air service, your grant authorization goes from $150,000 a year to $1.3 million a year. So for the 2 years, and then even in 2025, we met that threshold, and so our federal grants coming into the airport are 1.15 million higher than they would have been without commercial air service. So there is benefit to the airport in doing that as well.
Member Matthews.
Kind of to piggyback off what Member Nishioka said, there's a similar comparison and connection with Travel Salem and their ability to be able to recruit conferences here. So it's one of the things they've really come up in conflict with is that several of these conferences and sports events, it's part of just their criteria that you have to have commercial air service. Doesn't actually have to go to anywhere that they care about, but it's just one of their check boxes that they have to check. And so we're regularly being excluded from multiple of these opportunities to try to increase our TOT ultimately by bringing tourism in, by not having just that check box to be able to be checked.
Thank you. Anything else on the airport? All right, Member Manville.
Thank you, Chair. Is anything in the budget or the URA budget projecting anything specifically happening with the North Waterfront URA, or is it just to be determined and in the future it'll be built into the 5-year projections and other things in the budget?
Do you mean the actual tax revenue that might be received? Oh, okay. I'm not sure, Kristen. Yeah, it's not included in the budget, and I don't even know if we've begun that work yet. Still in the beginning phases, yeah.
Member Manville.
Unrelated. And the legislature recently passed House Bill 4148 allowing more flexibility with the TOT funds. And I'm curious if staff or council have had conversations about shifting how we allocate those TOT funds, since we're now able to use more of them for general services rather than tourism promotion.
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and you are correct. The legislation did pass. Our charter is actually what is restricting us at this point. So we would have to have a charter change in order to change the allocation, how we use that funding. It's not the state legislation.
Okay, other questions? Member Nordyke.
Sure, I want to go back to the URA budget. Under the URA budget book, page 48, Riverfront Downtown Capital Improvements, I just had some questions about some of the projects. I see one is the vacant building space analysis, a study to assess long-term downtown vacancies and market needs. I'm just curious if you could give like a short explanation of what that will look like. And then I also saw under a to be determined on page 48, property acquisition and renovation, opportunity purchase and renovation of property within the Riverfront Downtown URA for future redevelopment. Do you have that property identified, or is that, what is the status? Thank you, Director.
Kristen Rutherford, Community Planning and Development Director. So the first question, the study that would look at the vacant space, that study would be to look at what are the needs and the barriers for some of these spaces downtown that have been vacant long term, and are there changes in our grant programs or other things that we could do that could help switch that? Okay. And then regarding the opportunity purchase, this is something that we budget for on an annual basis, so that if an opportunity does come forward, then we have the ability to move forward with that. There is not currently a property identified.
And if I may, a follow-up. I saw also public art in downtown. There's a budget of $50,000 set aside for acquisition and installation of public art in the downtown area. Could that include, it doesn't say renovation, but I know we have some existing murals and other pieces of public art that could absolutely use some maintenance or some repairs. Would that be included in this budget?
It's not. We cannot use urban renewal for maintenance or repair. We can only use it for the new acquisitions.
Member Cohen.
Thank you. While the director is up here, I had a question. I read an article in which you were quoted a lot in the Salem Reporter about Block 50. So I was wondering if you can address some of the concerns that were in that article, the DEQ with the gasoline there, how long is that pushing us out on the project? Is there a timeline, status of completion? And then also the new cannery, if you might, as well.
Sure. So there are a few different things at play with Block 50 that are challenges with that project. So one that's impacting timeline is the glass flume, or the gas flume that goes underneath the road. And we need to do monitoring on property that's not under our control. And so that's been a very lengthy process working with DEQ and the property owner to get monitoring wells in place. They're not in place yet, but we've recently made some progress. So that's part of what's going on in that situation. Additionally, the development team, and it's not just this development team. I've talked with multiple developers over the last couple of months that are saying the same thing. Investors are sitting on sidelines. They're having a really hard time getting investors for projects. You compound that with the impacts of tariffs and fuel prices and all of these other things. The gaps are just growing and growing in project costs, and investors are not eager to leap in right now. So it's a bit of a waiting game to see if some of these dynamics shift. We'd also contemplated that we would be filling some of that gap or assisting with that feasibility with an urban renewal grant. There are some recent kind of new interpretations through BOLI that we're navigating that looks like it's also going to be making that more challenging. And then in terms of the cannery, so the cannery project is, or would be located in the new urban renewal area that's proposed. It's going to be the subject of the work session on May 18th. That property recently has a new buyer, and it's supposed to close the end of May. I had one email exchange with those buyers, but they have not come in yet to talk about their development plans with the city. So we don't have a timeline for that. There are issues tied to Front Street that we also are working through.
Member Cohen.
Thank you. Quick follow-up. For the DEQ assessment, is the city paying for that?
Yes.
Okay. And where's that coming from?
That's urban renewal. It's part of
okay.
urban renewal cleanup and remediation. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And regarding the investors, is there anything the city can do to entice the investors to move on these projects so that we don't have a pit for another 20 years or land that's vacant for until my kids are where I'm at right now?
So I wish the answer to that was yes. What we're hearing from developers is that investors, everybody's just hoarding cash right now. They are very risk averse right now. And in the past, one way to remedy that and entice that would be to add more urban renewal assets and larger grants, or kind of a bigger incentive. But with these new BOLI interpretations, there are things like a land donation or the demolition work, that sort of thing, that in the past would not have counted towards the $750,000 that we can contribute to a project. There's been a recent situation in Eugene where that's been interpreted differently by BOLI, so we're still navigating that, and we've asked the developer to work with BOLI to get a determination. We don't have that determination yet, but that's what would be required to secure that kind of investment, is more public funds, and then also public funds that didn't trigger prevailing wage.
I'm going to follow up on the cannery. I believe it was within the last 6 months that I read a big article about that in the Statesman Journal. Was that not the current owners that were discussing that project?
It was a potential buyer that was discussing it, not the current owner. So there was an individual, an entity that had an option on that property, and it had been extended multiple times. That recently expired, and it's a new buyer that had previously worked with the former group that is now in the process of closing on that. And I think it's around the end of May that they're supposed to close.
So the buyers that are the current potential buyers have not disclosed plans about the site. Okay.
They have not, but they were involved previously with the former team. So I would anticipate that it would be very comparable to what's already been shared with the city.
All right, thank you. Member Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To follow up on the information about the downtown vacancy analysis, does the city on any regular basis do a citywide vacancy analysis?
We do not.
Thank you.
Yeah. And just, to add a little bit more clarity to that, part of that is the way that we're funded. Something like this is funded through urban renewal. We don't have a position or funding from the general fund to do that kind of work.
You're saying you don't currently have that?
No.
Thank you.
Are there questions on this result area or urban renewal? All right, thank you. Thank you, staff, for your presentation. Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. The final item tonight under special orders of business is an opportunity for the committee to continue any earlier discussion or introduce an issue or concern for the committee's consideration. I think we're on 7D on your agenda if you're playing along at home. Are there any general questions or concerns that the budget committee member would like to raise at this time? Member Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just going back to the library question, when are we planning on discussing that? Staff, who knows that? Oh, Mr. CFO.
Appreciate the question, and I had the page open.
Are you in the big book?
I closed it. It is in the budget document.
I think that's a yes.
But we don't have any other specific spot to address it, so I'm hoping we can cover your question now, if that's okay.
Oh, really? Okay. So my question is, obviously, we passed the levy last year, and I've said on multiple times with this group and with Madam City Manager in regards to Northeast Salem having a library. And so I am still advocating for that, because when you look at those results from last year, if you go through your voting record to see all the wards, to see who voted for that levy, yes, all wards did vote and it passed, but Ward 5 had the lowest percentage of voters because folks who live 20, 25 minutes away from downtown, they don't frequent the library as much as if you're, 1 or 2 miles away. And so a lot of voters said no to that. And so my question is, how can we look at funding when it comes to putting a library in Northeast Salem? And I think everybody here, and I'm pretty sure Member Nordike could give out a whole dissertation in regards to what a library does when it comes to kids and families as to how that can turn around a neighborhood. And when you look at the data in regards to police, arrest, drug use, it's really, really high in Northeast. And I'm not going to call on Assistant Chief Ditto, but if you look at the data that we get, and when he sends us messages about, incidents that happen, a lot of those incidents that happen are in Northeast. So my question to this group is it worth the conversation to talk about what it would take to put some type of library or funding from the levy for that in Northeast? That's my question.
I'm going to address your other question, and then we can get to this one. So on page 228 of the bigger budget document, there's 2 projects. One is for affordable housing / library branch northern site, affordable housing / library branch southern site, and it's about $1 million for each site, and this is for site acquisition. This is not construction. So if we go back to
2022. We contemplated purchasing the sites earlier in the bond cycle and then constructing the actual library branch on one of the sites later in the bond program after operating funding was identified. This could evolve a little bit. We've had some internal staff discussions, and we'll be bringing this subject to the Bond Oversight Committee for discussion. So we have funding for 2 site purchases, some construction on one of the sites. We don't have funding for a full construction of 2 library branches. That was never in the bond projects. And just to clarify, the livability levy didn't contemplate operating funding for a library branch other than the current West Salem branch. It did expand hours at the West Salem branch and main library branch. So my concern, and just looking at it from just an operating funding perspective, is the current library budget, the livability levy, doesn't have capacity to fund staffing for additional library branch. So when you're thinking about it, think about it in terms of site purchase, design, acquisition, looking toward the future when we renew the levy, look at other funding sources for the library, and have that one of the library branches under construction.
Follow up, may I? I do see that, Mr. CFO, numbers 2 and 3, I see that is on hold. And so my next question would be, and this is probably a question for the city attorney, when it comes to private funds or even money that could be in a trust, are we allowed to ask for private funding?
Dan Atchison, City Attorney. So I think the question is, can we accept donations for funding for operations or for capital costs? Yes, we can. I think council actually recently adopted a donation policy that would govern that. But of course, the city can accept donations.
Well, just in my follow-up to that, just for the folks that are in the space and are, that are at home, that is my goal. My goal is to reach out to as many folks that love libraries, folks that love kids, folks that love families, schools, you name it, because that's an area that we desperately need more to have folks involved, especially our young people. Because when you look at the data, not only from the city, but also from the county, I've said this before and I'll say it again, that is the area that we have, I think the county refers to as hotspots. And those hotspots, they are triggering a lot of violence in regards to folks being arrested for drugs, folks being arrested for weapons. And so it's an ongoing feat. It's an ongoing problem. And so how do we curb that particular violence? How do we change the trajectory of what's happening in the Northeast? And one of the ways, I think, would actually be more places like a library where people can feel safe. And so I'm just putting this out there that I am purposely looking for folks that would be willing to give money to have a library in Northeast Salem. Thank you.
Member Matthews, and then Member Nordike.
So kind of while we're on the idea of Northeast libraries, is there an opportunity to partner with a library that already exists in Northeast, like the Chemeketa Library, like on the opposition to having to create something new from scratch and staff it ourselves, and obviously utilize our funding? They have funding already at the Chemeketa Library. Is there more of an opportunity for us to expand on what they have as opposed to developing something ourselves and operating it ourselves and not being in partnership that way?
Potentially, it's something we'd have to explore.
Sure, thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge that the goal of having a library branch in North Salem is a wonderful idea. And if we had it in the budget book right now, of course, I would enthusiastically endorse it. What I think you're seeing here, Councilor Brown, is that there are several steps involved. And step one is having funding from the bond to acquire property. The bond measures can fund the buildings, the acquisition, the construction, et cetera. The levy can only be used for staffing, and the levy as structured barely gets us back the 10 hours of library time that we lost. So I think to what our CFO is saying is the the levy is not structured to give you all the staff you want for a north branch in addition to the hours that we got back for the main branch. So this definitely speaks to our long-term needs. I mean, I'm in Northeast Salem and North Salem quite a bit these days, and I do see an enormous need to invest. I like Councillor Matthews' creativity of seeing how can we perhaps capitalize on a space that already is an institution of learning, that already incentivizes families, that's already on the bus route, that's already surrounded by housing, folks who need that. The Boys and Girls Club opened a location out there, and the families surrounding that area couldn't wait for it to open. They are going to be opening some sort of, I feel terrible, I can't remember the name, but some sort of youth resource center is in the works. It's all being done by a private foundation, however. So it could be that the way we get there is by thinking creatively, is by combining efforts or not. But you would need to dedicate some pretty serious staff time to find the right place, the right partners, and then start thinking, okay, now how do we pay for it all? And how do we ensure that we have enough funding to keep it going? Are there grant opportunities specific to creating or expanding upon libraries? So what you're asking for is a big ask, but you're thinking big, and that's what we need on council.
Thank you, Councilor Nordyke, and also Councilor Matthews. I guess my next question would be, URA money. Can we use URA money for funding? Is that a hot no?
It's a no for right now. I think all the current areas do not have a library branch contemplated in their plan, so it wouldn't be an eligible cost.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you.
Member Gwynn.
So I'm not, there's so many things that we talked about tonight. I'm kind of stuck on infrastructure and thinking about, and I'm not to be selfish, but thinking about South Salem and all of the development that is going on out there. My concern is, like at Davis and Liberty, it literally took 10 years to get a traffic light at Liberty and Davis. Mildred and Liberty, a kid died, and all we have there is a flashing stop sign. We don't have, and I understand that when the next phase and the next apartments come through, yes, we're going to eventually get a stop sign, or I'm sorry, a traffic light. Is that another 10 years? My point is, there's so much development happening. There are, like Fabre is supposed to go clear through to Battle Creek, and there's the Kane development where Juniper, I can't remember the name of the street, is going to go through and then connect on the backside and out to commercial. And I know we're going to be working on a transportation system plan, but my concern is we are adding so many multifamilies, so much traffic, and I just don't know that we're being thoughtful enough. There's 224 units going on Lone Oak, and that's going to impact traffic in that area as well. So my question, I think, is more broad in how can we as a city make sure we have the infrastructure in place and not lag behind 10 or 20 years in, does that make sense?
It's an excellent observation, and one we don't have a great answer for, which is why it hasn't been figured out quite yet. One of the challenges is, growth typically pays system development charges. You collect those system development charges so that you then can build infrastructure. The fees we typically collect on those SDCs aren't high enough to really get the infrastructure done that we need. In addition, when we have affordable housing, they get SDC waivers or they don't pay any SDCs. And so you kind of have, you want the housing, but you're not collecting enough money to really take care of all the infrastructure. So we are looking at doing a SDC methodology study, starting that this summer. There'll be a work session with council to talk about it so that we can look at some of those things. But anytime you try to collect more money, it puts more cost on the development and the homes and everything else, and they just don't mesh real well. So that's a challenge we have not figured out yet.
Embedded in your answer, I believe, is that there is capacity to raise the SDCs should council have the will to do so.
Yeah, it has to be based on trips in the TSP and what type of trip generation is happening that you can actually make the costs equitable to what's being developed. So it's not just like, oh, let's, charge this much more money and then we'll have enough to do it. There's a lot more that goes into it. But the council ultimately will be able to make decisions on, what we should charge based on the information that we provide.
Okay, thank you. I was keying off of your comment that the current amount being received isn't enough to pay for the necessary infrastructure. Ms. Vang.
Thank you, Chair. Member Gwen, you spoke to me when you started talking about infrastructure and traffic, because that's how I started to become involved in our local government. So I share your concerns, and especially traffic and pedestrian safety. So would you like to join me on a committee about such things? But with that, I know tonight we're talking about infrastructure and things, but is there at any point we can talk about our budget and potentially collaborating with our community partners or other agencies to address traffic concerns or alternative modes of transportation to incentivize residents to use other modes of travel other than their car to reduce traffic down in South Salem? I know the same issues are in East and Northeast Salem too. So just a thought out there. And my initial reaction to your comments, Member Gwen. So, thank you.
Other comments or questions at this time? Member Varney?
Well, of course, I'm going to have to step in on traffic. Since West Salem's continuing to grow, I keep thinking about 463 plus 22 plus close to 500 units going in right now in the Dokes Ferry, Brush College area. Yeah, we need to do something with SDCs, but is there another option? I mean, I'm thinking when we do the approved land use permits with all the conditions, et cetera, normally the improvements are right adjacent to the property there. But is there a way, thinking about Member Gwen, is there a way to set aside funding for signal intersection improvements when that increased growth puts that intersection at a certain level over capacity?
So that does exist for certain types of developments. The developers do traffic impact analyses to determine how many trips and how that is going to impact adjacent intersections. Generally, a single development doesn't create enough trips to where that intersection has to get a signal at that point in time. And so they will pay a fee. That fee will go into a trust and agency account and be dedicated for that intersection. And then as developments continue to develop around the area, they each pay a fee, and then hopefully when it's all developed, there's enough money there that we could go out and build that signal. So they do pay those fees now. I don't know that it's necessarily on single-family homes. I think it's more on multifamily and commercial. But there are some processes in place. Does it get us over the hump to where we can afford it? Not necessarily. That's how we look for grant funding and other types of funding. So.
There has to be a better way. Because I think about just measuring the impact of one place is great, but what happens when there are 3 places going at once? You know, I mean, how do they compensate for all that additional traffic on a road or an intersection, I guess the intersections, and the cumulative effect as they all come together and they hit another intersection?
Yeah, I think that's really looking at the traffic impact analysis process and the SDCs, because the SDCs pay a share of it as well. So what I'm hoping for is that with the SDC methodology update, you look at what trips are expected over time, what the cost of those improvements would be. There's what's called a numerator denominator. You take all the cost of all those projects, and you figure out how much developable land is left and how it's going to develop. And you divide that out to get a cost per unit, and then people pay that fee, and you try to make it work. But it's not a perfect system. Obviously, we have, you know, you're all seeing it as the growth comes. We're not keeping up with it. We have work to do.
Oh, Member Nordyke.
Sure. I wanted to just make more of a generalized comment. I noticed from page 231 of our budget document that the Affordable Housing Opportunity Fund, which the voters approved as part of the 2022 infrastructure bond, that fund is still largely intact with $9.27 million in funding still available. It's identified in our fiscal year 2027 as a carryover project opportunity. And I urge our staff, let's spend this money down. Let's find a project, let's build it. This money is not becoming worth more over time, it's becoming worth less. And I am looking forward. I know we have an upcoming meeting to talk about our housing production strategy, so I'm hopeful staff can give us an update on what the status is of this opportunity fund. There are a lot of potential options out there, but I would really love for us to move forward because that need for affordable housing is dire in our community right now. Affordability is very top of mind for our residents. So that was just something I wanted to just put a pin in for next time, but it is in our budget book, so I wanted to make the comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Nordyke. Member Manville, and then Member Gwynn.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make a process comment overall that it's been easier for me in past budget cycles to have more time for the budget committee process, that pushing through this like one a week and like getting a big chunk and like trying to get this, like it's super fast and it's exhausting, and sometimes we've had more time, and I would love if in future budget cycles we could try to spread this out a little bit more. I know that staff, you are so overworked, and report after report show that, and I know that you keep up with all the questions I send, and I really love that. But just process-wise, if we can spread this process out, we could do things like vote on CIPs the first time. Like, anyway, I just would love a little bit more room to breathe.
Thank you. Member Gwynn.
I wanted to sort of piggyback on what Member Nordyke said, but I want to remind us that homeownership for middle-income families builds generational wealth, stabilizes neighborhoods, and expands our tax base. So my question is, how does the city weigh the economic and community benefits of supporting attainable home ownership against the heavy focus on subsidized rental and supportive housing? And is there any plan to make adjustments to give middle-income buyers more attention in this next update for the housing production strategy? That's just an overarching question, not one to be answered tonight.
No, Josh, I want a detailed end.
Yeah, we'll bring something back, and it might be just, we'll have to wait for the next housing production strategy update.
Member Matthews.
Well, while we stretch the the actual design of the budget committee and what we talk about here, because normally housing production strategy I don't think is a huge piece of it, but I do want to just kind of back up on this and agree that, especially with the homeownership aspect, and we talked about this a little bit last time in our council meeting, and being much more thoughtful in the way that of the ratios that we're creating of housing as we develop so much multifamily that we've done in recent years, and maybe not as much of the middle housing, maybe not as much of the single family. There's no opportunities for people to move from that apartment to the next stage of life and the next stage of life after that, leaving vacancies for people to actually, for the lowest income, to be able to move into. And so I think that as part of the housing production strategy, I say as a general comment, since we seem to be doing that, it'd be nice on the housing production strategy meeting to have some of that conversation and that data come back on what is a healthy ratio of housing to be creating as far as apartments to middle housing to single family, and where are we fitting in that type of design right now?
Thank you, Member Matthews. Other comments, questions, issues to be raised at this time? I am not seeing any. Okay. So thank you, everyone, for the discussion. We now move to the final topic of the evening, which is public testimony for future budget issues. Is there anyone present who would like to provide testimony regarding items that are not on the agenda? Okay, I don't see any. As we head toward adjournment, yay, for the evening, I wanted to remind everyone the next Budget Committee meeting will be held next week, Wednesday, April 29th, 2026 at 6 p.m. The Budget Committee will review the good governance and safe and healthy result area budgets, as well as conduct a public hearing on the possible uses of state revenue sharing, and as we know, a continuation of the CIP conversation. And to everyone's glee, Budget Committee Chair Paul Tigan will be back. And with that, I think we're done for the evening. We are adjourned.